Yeah. The general thought with the chip in question is, excuse me, we have these plot vendors right now. And we don't particularly mind there being plot vendors. This is fine. But what we don't want is for plot vendors to be running proprietary pools which are tied to their plotting software. That's a centralizing effect, and kind of munging together things that shouldn't be munged. So we would like it if well, a few things happen. Number one, people who are using plot vendors don't have to hand over their keys to the plot vendor. That they can have their plotting stuff sitting on a machine, and they know what the nature of its connection to the internet is, and they know it's not able to steal any of their monies or hack any of their things or anything like that. That's very good for our farmers to have things set up in that way. Like, presumably, if there's proprietary software running on a machine, then who knows what might happen on that machine, but it's confined to that machine. And then we also want it to be that people who are using a farming or a plot vendor's stuff are able to switch pools as normal. And so it is my understanding that GigaHorse has a thing for doing this. And it's very, very similar to the thoughts that I put together when I thought of what is the right way to do this. Basically taking some chunk of the farming rewards and some fraction of the time, handing it over to the plot vendor instead of the farmer, based on some formula. So we're trying to, if it's possible, it would be nice to just completely codify what GigaHorse is already doing so that that code base doesn't have to be changed at all. Although I'm not terribly clear on exactly what the formula is there for when it's split.
But one call out too. There's a difference between CPU and GPU, so that's an additional thing that needs to be codified or abandoned in GigaHorse. If it's kind of hard for the harvester to be able to tell whether it's the CPU or GPU beyond the scope of what GigaHorse is doing.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I think it means a split fee structure depending on what type of compute you're using for your plot decompression. So it's GigaHorse charges less if you're using CPU, I believe, than if you're using GPU.
Yeah, it's 1.5% for CPU, and maybe it's tied to the sea level of the plot, and just assuming that you can't really use CPU above a certain sea level. I'm not sure about that, but if it's beyond just a sea level split fee, it might get a little tricky.
Okay, all right. Well, that's definitely a thing to discuss. My understanding is there's been some amount of frustrations with this so far. I've had some communications with no SSD who seem quite open to this because they have a problem with people not really trusting them. I don't know if anyone from no SSD is on this call. I'm not clear on that. But yeah, and I'm not sure. It looks like Max isn't on this call.
With regard to that, I just am basically getting caught up as quickly as possible with regard to this.
Yeah.
And a couple things. Now that I am more aware of this, I'm going to be working a little bit closer, trying to figure out what's actually the problem. I think this call is a wonderful first step for getting everyone to seeing everybody as a human being, a person, putting names to faces. I apologize, Max can't make it, but it is kind of late for him. He is in Asia right now. So there is that complicating factor. With that said, Matt and I and Max, we have a stand up every Monday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific. And so, maybe in the future we could have these meetings at a different time to allow Max to come in. And but yeah, I want everyone to be assured that we are 100% on board with, at least in principle, with the ideas being advanced, because I think it makes the best sense for everybody and the community in general.
Yeah, that's great. I've gotten mostly very positive feedback on this just as a concept in general, and then there's been apparently some amount of frustrations in the communications when people get down in the weeds, and because I was not in those conversations, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Uh, I can talk a little bit about some of the getting into the weeds stuff. Dylan already kind of hinted at some of it. But most of the issue seems to be around. Well, I think there's two things. One that no one's really brought up, but I think is important, is right now the way the harvester protocol works, you are required to have split key plots. That there's the farmer's key, which has to be kind of given to the plotting device before plotting starts. And then actual signage is done using a combination of the farmer's key and the plot key. This is a good best practice. It's very secure. It's a little silly for it to be required. It's kind of a pain for some plot vendors to do things this way. So we're planning on supporting making it so the plot can just unilaterally sign locally without the farmer key getting involved. And I think that's uncontroversial, though I don't know who it really applies to. The other thing is having to do with really the formulas for who gets which farming rewards and how this is reported to the user and audited, and what the behaviors are if it seems to be misbehaving. So the general thought is there's some formula for saying this is the value of this proof of space. There's just some formula that says, okay, well, I took this proof of space, hashed it with the challenge, blah, 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 blah. And I came up with some value. And if that's, and the plot device is going to decide based on whether that's above or below some thresholds, whether it's the farmer who gets the farming reward or it's the plot vendor who gets the reward. And the question here is, what is that value? And how is this reported to the user? And what expectations does the user set with their stuff as a standard? This is slightly fuzzy because this is sort of vague recommended behavior, but there's a question of what does the standard stuff do? What are the common practices with regards to this?
Again, I'm not technical, but is the question whether or not this can be dynamically defined per the plot vendor, as you say?
Well, there's it. So different plot vendors might have different fractions of stuff that they're getting. Different, as Dylan said, the same plot vendor might have different fractions depending on just like what hardware is running, what's going on there. Also, and there's a question of how is this reported to the farmer? Are they just told what happened with, like, what the threshold was set for things and whether they got it or not? And is there some kind of automatic flagging of, hey, this looks wrong or not? And if something looks egregiously wrong, does it just refuse to propagate the block? Like, what are the practices here that should be standard? And also, I mean, there's a question of, does it sometimes just say, well, if you're a tiny little farmer, we'll just give it to you no matter what because you hardly get anything, or maybe not, or something because it's a little stochastic. So I'm not really sure how standard we want to make these things and how we want to do them. Our general inclination right now, I think, is to just log everything and tell the user what's going on.
I believe that's right. Yeah, that we're not actually taking action based on if the harvester is cheating somehow. The formula, I thought that Harold can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought the formula was standardized as you take the proof of space and add the challenge and then hash that and then modulo 2 to the 32. So you come up with a number, and then it's up to the harvester, I guess, or the farmer to decide what that threshold should be and what the fee withholding would be below that threshold. So I think that can change.
Right. So that's what we currently have. With last we spoke with Max and NoSSD. That's basically what was proposed, and nobody had any objections to that. So basically, we're just applying that convention, not taking any severe action other than just basically logging it. Every time a harvester takes a reward, that's logged, and then the formula or the convention is applied, and then if it's correct, if it's below the fee threshold, then that's logged as a valid application or reward, and then taken that it's valid, that the harvester can take it. Otherwise, it's logged that it's improperly taken the reward. That's all that's happening currently.
Yeah.
And then so that means the fees can be whatever it wants. It's dynamic because there's nothing beforehand being agreed upon. So it's just the only thing that's being verified is basically that the fees being applied, the convention is being applied properly given the fee challenge, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah. This seems like weirdly, like pretty uncontroversial. Like everyone seems on board, but like I said, when we've gotten into discussions, people have gotten a little frustrated. So I'm not sure where the issues are coming up.
Hey, Bram, so you had mentioned there's like a potential change to the format that wouldn't require the farmer to sign. I mean, is that being considered in this, or is it more like get this done and then eventually
no, that'll be part of this. I think particularly for no SSD, I think they probably have it set up so that their plots just have to work this way unless you have to replot everything. And so I don't want to make I do not wish to try to force down a standard that would force them to replot everything. That would be horrible.
Does this mean though that like a unique farmer is signing like a plot, or are we back?
Oh, no. It just means that the plot actually knows its own damn key. So right now the standard is that the plot key is actually an aggregate signature between the signature that's sitting on the plot and a signature that the farmer has. And so the plot doesn't know the full key, neither does the farmer. This is, meant to be intentionally so that this is meant to be fairly secure. It's kind of silly because part of the thinking here was that people might want to delete plots that had actually won something just for security reasons. That's looking pretty ridiculous right now because the whole thing is so secure. It's insane. There's very little reason to worry about that. But that was, it was a little over-engineered when it was first made. So it's definitely silly to put that in as an absolute requirement, which is the way it works right now. So
is I mean, like, because we look at, like Nakamoto score, is that doesn't have to do with like a unique farmer and the farmer itself signing a block, right?
Oh yeah, no, the only way this like really matters is if you have some cabal, some big, this is going to sound ridiculous. It might matter if you have some big cabal of farmers who like run everything and someone's trying to do a long-term retroactive reorg of everything and just goes and starts digging up all the old keys. The problem is if you're missing even one of them, it's all gone. So this is just an utterly ridiculous concern. And that's why nobody even tries to delete plots that have won a block in the past. It's just not, it's not meaningful from a security standpoint. I mean, in principle, ideally, it would be great to do that, and it wouldn't really cost that much resources to just replot like that one plot that happened to win that one time. But nobody bothers doing it. So yeah, it's sort of my bad that it's a little over-engineered. It does help also though if someone like broke into your farming systems and started trying to steal your stuff, it's harder for them to do it with the current way things are set up. But again, it's a little silly.
I mean, even optimistically, couldn't you only go back maybe 7 blocks or so to do a reorg?
Yeah, it would be, yeah, exactly. It'd be extremely unlikely for it to make any difference whatsoever. It does have this nice property that the way it works right now, if someone tried to like if someone managed to break into your farming rig, just hack it, and then tried to just steal all the funds, they couldn't do it because the farmer key needs to do it. So you could have your like farmer server on a slightly more secure rig than your I'm not sure what to call these things. Your things that have the plots on them can in principle sort of kind of be on less secure things than the farmer is, because someone can't just go steal all your funds just from the rigs that are doing the harvesting. But of course, someone could also just break in and redo all your plots. And although you would notice that.
I'd hope people are paying to separate wallets and not just keeping everything on there.
Oh, right. Yeah. This is not stealing. This is not retroactive stealing. This is active stealing. So you're taking the funds. You break into a harvester machine and start redirecting the funds to, like a hacker breaks into a harvester machine and starts redirecting the funds to themselves. That's a little more difficult to do with the way things work right now. But again, as I said, it's over-engineered. It's fine to do. It should not be a requirement of the protocol. It is right now. We're going to change that. Partially because I'm pretty sure, very specifically, no SSD does not have their plot set up this way. It's set up the standard way. So we're just going to support the plot, the keys fully just sitting on the plot.
So a couple bigger, higher level questions that I had, and I think you've clarified, but let's just make it absolutely clear here, is that if this goes through, first of all, can you join any pool that you want with this new harvester protocol and switch pools? And then second, would you have to replot? And I guess that would go for if you're using GigaHorse or if you're using no SSD or all of the above.
So the idea is there might be some software support on the plot vendors necessary for this. There definitely is. But the answers are, for number one, absolutely yes, you can move around between pools. And some vendors have expressed annoyance that they don't really feel like running pools anyway. And it's nice to just put your software up and have no operational anything for yourself, and everyone just uses your software and you get money. And number two, in answer to your second one, no replotting is going to be necessary. Although support for the new protocol by the plot vendors is going to be necessary, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, GigaHorse, we have never wanted to run a pool. We're pool agnostic. You could do solo, do wherever you want to go. It's up to you.
Yeah, and no SSD does not run that way, which has caused them to get a very bad reputation. But in my limited interactions with them, I get the feeling that they just did it that way because they didn't know how else to do it, and they would really like to not have a bad reputation and be good citizens.
Well, so your sense, I mean, just because this has been somewhat debated at a high level, is that they're good actors in good faith trying to advance the blockchain and not trying to do anything.
Yeah, well, they have been doing something not good, but I get the impression it's because they don't know the right way to do it. So the idea here is to show them the right way to do it so they can start doing that.
And they seem to be fully on board with
yes.
everything that we're talking about here.
Yes, that seems to be the case.
And just to be clear, GigaHorse, we're on board too. Just give us some time to figure out some of the other stuff.
It's my impression that whoever's behind no SSD does not want their identity to be known. I'm fine with that. It's fine. It's not important to me to know their identity. There are many very, very good reasons they might have for not wanting their identity to be known. So I'm leaving them alone.
So just kind of a specific. So it's my understanding that they have like one plot NFT for their entire plotting system. Is that how it works, or are they even using like the plot NFTs to point? And is that like a problem? Like if a single vendor just decided, I guess that's where the pool support comes in. Someone can switch a pool.
Oh, they might have their pool go to a thing. Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know if like in GigaHorse, it's like the farmer's still creating their own plots and a plot NFT is still valid, but I don't know if that's actually the case in no SSD. I think the farmer is creating no SSD plots.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it's going to their thing. Huh.
I'm speculating, but that's my understanding of it.
You're probably right on that one. Right. So if in terms of scope, we want to make it so that no SSD specifically can change what they're doing, it wouldn't. I mean, we need to know what they're doing. It wouldn't be that hard to make it so that, where does this go? There. Okay, I'll have to think more about that.
Wouldn't that necessitate a hard fork, not a soft fork?
Well, there's no forks going on here of any kind.
Well, to unwind the way in which, well, again, we don't know how they're actually doing it. So, I mean.
Okay, yeah, no, but I want to be clear. There's no forks here because this is not hitting consensus in the slightest. This is all being built above consensus. So they can always, right. So the problem is, and I did not think this through very well. For no SSD specifically, there's this question of what do their plots look like. They are probably all already set to a particular pool. Right, so you can't per vendor switch them around, which is kind of annoying for that. That is kind of annoying, isn't it? Trying to think. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, which might not be the greatest idea. I think they have this problem where there's no way for particular no SSD customers. Also, I think no SSD doesn't have nearly as many customers. So then they want new customers. So they could keep a legacy thing for old customers and then a new thing for new customers, right? The problem for them is even if they take their existing pool thing and just make it kind of be an anyone can spend, then like a permanent anyone can spend, then the problem with that is it's not really paying into a pool because it's not differentiating between which no SSD customer it is. So they can make it so all the legacy people have no pooling and they can leave all the legacy people on the existing pooling, but it's hard to
My inkling is people will replot, or at least those who care will just replot because they already had to replot anyway to get on this.
Yeah, I mean, I would like ideally to have as little replotting as necessary, but it might be that, yeah, it could be that trying to make it so that no SSD customers don't have to replot is maybe not happening. Oh, well, also they also might be a little skeeved because they kind of handed their keys over to no SSD already. So that's that's not good. I think they did. Actually, I'm not 100% sure what no SSD is exactly doing, so I probably shouldn't talk too much about them, lest I accidentally accuse them of something that they didn't actually do. But yeah. Anyway, we have a.
All right, Brad, if I could jump in again, just to throw another technical thing. So yeah. I'm just coming into this, I think yesterday, I mean, I caught up to speed on the pull request there, a lot of back and forth with Harold there, and some of the other guys. And so it seemed like Max had a disconnect on the fee verification. Did that get resolved? Because he was like saying it's not possible to do it on the network, and I think
I'm not.
There was a different view about saying do it on the former. So did that get?
I really don't know. Because this is touching on, and I can't speak for what Max was saying. But that I believe that was in the general vicinity of this question of when does the when does the farmer get the farming reward, and when does the plot vendor get the farming reward? And how does the farmer audit that this is behaving the way it's supposed to? But we do want to make it so that it's possible to have a farming machine that's running a plot vendor's software that might be untrusted by the farmer, either because the farmer doesn't really trust the plot vendor, or they just are worried that that machine might be hackable, and just make it so it's barely connected to the internet at all. So the only thing that it can really do is talk to the farmer's farming server, which talks to their full node, and that's the only connection to the internet that it has. And this thing can still operationally work in this way. This is an explicit goal of what we want to accomplish here. And that can definitely be done in all cases with no replotting. It's just you might have to replot in order to join pools depending on.
Okay.
If I may, real quick, Matt, to answer what we currently have, we adopted, with no objection from no SSD, we have adopted the last thing that Max proposed, which is basically applying the fee convention that everybody is happy with, which he suggested, and then just validating that from the farmer side with no pre-configuration. So basically, the harvester tells us whenever they take a proof, tells us what the fee threshold they use. The farmer simply applies, calculates the same challenge, applies the formula, and see if it's valid. If that if the threshold is below what's supposed to be to take what the harvester told it to be able to take that reward, and just reports it. So that's the status quo at the moment. It's obviously it's open to be changed, but that's was his suggestion, and we adopted that as no SSD had no further input or objections to it.
Okay, and then what's I mean, is there anything to stop modification of the farmer? And I mean, it's because it's client side, like it doesn't, you know, obviously it's just kind of.
Can you say again? I couldn't.
It's farmer, it's client side, so they can report anything. I think it's almost just like a convention, right? It's not really
yes.
It's not enforcement, right? It's just so
no. There's no enforcement currently being taken. So it's basically just logging. If a harvester happens to take a block and the fee threshold that it reports is not valid,
right?
You'll see something in the log. That's the only thing that's happening. The block is still going to be farmed normally to the address that was specified by the harvester. It's not reverted or anything.
Okay, so it's just kind of like, you know, agreeing on a standard, but that standard is not really interoperable. I mean, between farmer, it's just kind of like if you're writing like a lot of software, it'd be standard. It's just making sure everything's kind of, you know, it's more like the logging is standardized, right? Because I mean that's. I suppose, right?
There's no standard in logging. Currently, it's basically, let's say it's arbitrary. I was the one who wrote what's logged. The PR is open, so if anybody has any suggestion or objections to the language used, they can do so. One of my colleagues already commented on it, and I updated it. But what is standardized is the fee convention itself. But there's no standard in what's supposed to happen if the threshold, if the fee is applied improperly, or the threshold is, I guess the convention does not pass, right? What the action we're taking is basically also what Matt suggests is just report it, which is what we were going to do initially, because there's no, I guess the reasoning behind that, as opposed to rejecting a block, is that nobody wins. What's the point if nobody's going to win neither side if both sides reject the block? If the farmer decides to revert or use the farmer address that it usually does, then the harvester will reject that, and vice versa. So, what's the point?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that, and and also I know Max can be a little bit tricky to work with sometimes, but it seems like we're actually all on the same page. I mean, that's what I guess I'm trying to get at. Like, is there actually some still unresolved kind of differences of opinion that might make a difference, or materially? I mean, small things, sure, whatever, but like, because I want to go, we meet with them again just to see, can things proceed? Like, or what do you need from our side? That kind of thing. Like, what would you like to see?
From our side, not as far as I'm concerned. We used what he suggested, and no SSD was cool with it. So if there's no further objections from you guys on that side, I don't believe we have any problems. And no SSD didn't seem to have any issues either. The only outstanding thing I would say is what Bram was speaking of regarding the double signing, meaning signing from the harvester and the farmer side. But as Bram just mentioned, that it might not actually be possible. They might have to still replot. So that's still open. I believe that's not a problem for you guys as
That's right. Yeah, it's more
harvester.
Yeah,
So
I think the answer there is going to be that that without replotting, the existing legacy plots for proprietary stuff can be run in a way where they're isolated from the net. But if you want the ability to jump between pools, you are going to have to replot. I think that's going to be the resolution there, just due to the limitation of what we can physically accomplish.
I think for most users of no SSD, that's probably not going to be an issue because, there's a trust issue already with them. So if they have to replot,
I think, like I said, again, I do not wish to accuse them of something that did not happen. My vague impression is that at least the farmers who have used no SSD have had the impression that they have at some point handed over some of their keys to no SSD. And so it would be nice for them to just generate new keys and replot everything.
And potentially wipe out their whole computer.
Yes.
I mean, this isn't going to change the fact that they're still running. You have to run their farmer that can auto update, right? Just because you can change pools, unless it's going to change if they can run Chia's.
No,
right?
It's not. You're not running their farmer. You're running their harvester. That's talking to the farmer. So it's not running the full node or anything. It's just its own little thing there, and it can be run on a separate piece of hardware. Right. So there's this unknown proprietary software that has free reign to do whatever on that machine, but you can kind of see from the outside what it is that it's accomplishing.
Okay. Yeah. And as long as we get this documented really well, it's the recommended setup then in order to be safe and make sure that you're not going to get rugged. It sounds likely that most people will be on board with this.
I just quickly, I actually have experienced no SSD briefly. All you do is give them your receive address and the command line parameters. There's no key or anything. So yeah, if you install it completely separately on its own device, you just give them your receive address where you want funds to be paid, and that's all. So
because you're using their plots, it's because you're not making your plots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so it's not like the so it's not like the OG pooling stuff, which was really bad.
Yeah, you're basically a harvester for them, is what I understand.
Okay.
Which is very problematic because there's no semblance of, if you don't want to use them, you just have to replot, which I suppose is going to be the case regardless. But it's just tough. Like, is it much better at that point if you're signing your own blocks or whatever? I mean, you're still just beholden to what they do. But I guess GigaHorse is better because if the development team goes away, we can still use GigaHorse's plots. But if no SSD goes away, then your whole system is underwater.
Yes. And one thing we want to have happen here is that it's totally okay for this harvesting device to just not have auto update on the proprietary plotting stuff. It's just sitting there separate from the internet. But making sure, obviously, it's physically possible for someone to reverse engineer the software and do whatever with it. Protecting things on that level is, up to the individual plot vendor. But barring that, the plot vendor is assured that as long as their software that's running on the device isn't getting compromised and it is running properly, they are getting the stuff that they should be, even when it's not actually properly connected to the internet.
Do we know for sure that no SSD is going to be able to implement this without serious reengineering? I mean, isn't there a potential that they are doing some sort of remote compute and that's how they're gaining this extra advantage, or have we ruled that out?
I don't think they are.
Even if they are, I think that's completely separate from this piece.
Okay.
Well, there could be a thing where there's remote compute like finishing up, like basically doing that bit of grinding that you need to finish very, very compressed plots that could be happening remotely. I don't think they're doing that. Like, I don't think they want to do that. That's super annoying to build. Like, really, rather not.
Okay, so I think we've gone through what's going to happen or what we want to happen pretty thoroughly. Are there more questions regarding this chip, this update?
Timeline. When are you guys trying to have something official and live? Just because we maintain our own farmer and we'd like to stay up to date with protocol changes. So it's just a question of how do we map out our development timeline.
As soon as possible. Like, once we can all come to agreement, we get it out, and then people implement as fast as they can, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry, why is there this feeling that we need to rush it?
Well, we're not trying to rush it. We're not trying to get it out before it's ready. This is a fairly simple thing on a technical level that doesn't seem to have much pushback. So it seems like it should be possible to get out quickly. Also, we just don't want centralization in pooling. So the longer proprietary things sit around, the bigger those not really properly set up pools get. So we don't want that to happen.
So what has more impact then? Is it proof of space is far more weight to it than number of farmers?
Well, what you kind of care about is Nakamoto consensus. Now sorry, not Nakamoto coefficient. Now, what you mean by that gets a little fuzzy at some point, because the way pooling protocol works, it's at least if you have a proprietary pooling protocol, it's kind of like Bitcoin old school pooling protocol, which is where the pool is making the blocks, and that's bad because that counts as like a single big entity from the point of view of calculating your Nakamoto coefficient, right? Like if that one pool got over 50% by themselves, they could do everything. So it's kind of nice to make it so that your Nakamoto coefficient is kind of high, even when you have a few large-ish pools, because it's still the farmers making the blocks. And if the pool has an issue, the farmers can just leave the pool. And so then you can pretty straight-faced claim that the Nakamoto coefficient is the larger number, not the number of pools who sum to over half, but the number of farmers who sum to over half. Yeah, so Bitcoin is also moving in this direction with Stratum V2 actually happening now. They stole it from us because we in turn stole it from them. So Bitcoin had wanted to do basically what amounts to our new pooling protocol a long time ago. So we just jumped to doing it the right way after a whole month and a half when we launched, during which I was catching complete hell for not having a pooling protocol ready already. And now finally Bitcoin is getting around to doing it as well, just because it's a really, really good idea from a security standpoint to make it so that the only thing that the pool is responsible for doing is smoothing out rewards, and that farmers can change what pool they're using whenever they want.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but is there still kind of an issue with no SSD and with regard to Nakamoto coefficient, because they're using proprietary plots that cannot be used for different pools? And in that, if no SSD goes away, then suddenly everybody has to replot.
Yeah, well, the issue is everyone who's using no SSD is all on their pool. That's just the way they're set up.
Just so the interesting thing about, I think it's the incentives too that are kind of the problem here. And if we're trying to obviously keep things decentralized, the extra few percent that you get in compression with no SSD is worth it to the huge farms once you figure out electricity usage and all of that, even if you're having to get higher capacity GPUs. And then the incentives for the small farmer is that it's so freaking easy. It's literally like just a quick EXE you install, start plotting, give them your receive address. That's it. You don't have to download a blockchain, the whole database. You can get lots of these little harvesters going very, very quickly. So from an end user perspective, that's the incentive, that it's easy. And then from the big farms perspective, the incentive is they're getting a few more percentage points of min-maxing. So that's, I think the incentive here is to try to stop them, try to slow them down on their centralization, whether they're doing it intentionally or not. That's the problem. And so in my mind, that's the incentive of this whole venture.
Yeah, well, it's always going to be a little bit easier to just have someone else, running your infrastructure, but you want to make it so that you have the flexibility up front, right? That you can make your stuff more secure, that you can switch between pools when you feel like it, that you can use your own locally run full node if you want to, instead of using like a trusted full node. But inevitably, there's going to be a market for people having the more convenient options just in general.
Yep, that's what I love about this. I think you're right. I think it would probably, just from my basic experience with NoSSD, I think it would require replotting, but they could keep the kind of the legacy pool going, very much like the what was it? I forget the name of the OG pool that was centralized. That H pool. Thank you. Yeah, I think they still maintain actually an old OG H pool and then the new H pool based on the official farming.
Yeah, that's my expectation, is that it'll kind of be like that. I believe H pool's official pool protocol pool is bigger than their legacy one at this point, but I could be wrong on that. Yeah. No, like, I don't think any vendor particularly wants to push back on their customers who want to have pool flexibility and stuff, particularly larger ones who are a little skeeved of being, stuck with this one vendor.
More questions?
Yeah, so I'm just back on development timeline here, so we can do some planning. But engineering wise, and maybe Harold can answer it. How much engineering versus just deciding, what we're trying to do here is going to take? And I mean, based on this meeting, have we decided? Is there any more back and forth required, or is after this meeting we're saying, okay, we've got the implementation decided, now we have to integrate it, and once that's done, it's done? Or is there more on the agreement side that needs to happen?
I'll speak as to what we currently have, excluding the signing stuff from former harvester, which I think it might still be outstanding. From the current point of view, meaning having support for the third-party harvesters to be able to make a decision as to updates or like. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I muted him. Go ahead.
As to as the harvester wants to make the decision, they basically just need a little bit more info in the existing messages. So engineering wise, it's quite simple. I can, if you want, Dylan, I'm not sure, maybe if you're in Keybase, or I guess in Discord, but I can even help out with whatever you guys need. But it's extremely simple. We basically only touch the harvester protocol and a little bit of the farmer protocol, which I believe is a single message. There's no new messages. We only augment a little bit of the current messages, one in the farmer protocol and maybe a couple in the harvester. It's basically just adding a few fields and doing a couple of checks. Basically, that's it. And if needed, we can have another meeting, and be it public or not, with developers that need to want to go over the specific changes from the engineering point of view, and we can explain and go over each step of what's happening. But it's quite simple.
But just from everyone, key stakeholders being aligned, do we feel like we're all on the same page as to what we're going to change? So the next step is just to go and engineer it. Is that what we're saying here? Or I guess I'm just wondering if there's more alignment that needs to occur.
I think Jeff wants to say something.
Yeah, I'm just asking if we could not go too slow, but if we could slow down just a little bit. I do apologize. I'm getting caught up as of today, and I need to kick some ideas around to
I guess do we
make sure
need
we're on
like
the same
another
page.
meeting? Like, do we
Yeah,
want to
that'd be
try and
great.
meet up, whatever, next week or two? And because for me, it's like, great, we can go through all this stuff, but until there's like alignment, right? If the engineering's easy, then the hard part is just alignment. So I'm just trying to, say, hey, are we at that point or not? So if that's, if we can get there next week or the week after, I think we'd be happy. I'm not trying to rush it. It's just, we have resources, allocating decisions we want to make around what we do, and that's not anyone else's problem, but I'm just trying to get us all there. So.
Yeah, I think we have just everyone has the feeling like we're in general agreement, and we put out this chip so that we have an actual, byte level specification to discuss. And we don't want to move forward on it until everyone's like, okay, yeah, we're good. We agree to this. And Max has expressed some concerns that I'm not totally sure what they are. And no SSD, I get a little bit of a feeling that they're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And we'll deal with it later. So I'm a little worried that they might notice issues after the fact when they actually start implementing, but I don't know, maybe they understand it completely well and they're not just being, and they're just fine and don't have much to add. I don't know.
Okay, so for now, where this goes is you can leave your reviews and thoughts on this chip in the chip itself. There's also been a lot of back and forth in the PR, so that's fine too, to continue the discussion there. If you want to have more meetings among yourselves in the future, that's fine too. If there's an absolute need to have another meeting like this, then I guess we could do that too. But what we want to do is get alignment on paper, so to speak, in GitHub and on both the chip and the PR, and then from there we'll move it forward to finalizing it and get it into an actual build. And as far as, let's call it voting, the way that you vote if you agree with this is that you install it. And so hopefully we get most people to go on board with this.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can get to a point where we don't have anyone from the developer community expressing any serious concerns. And we're not there today, but I'm not really totally sure what people's concerns are. And we want to get that all smoothed out as quickly as possible, which I think should be doable.
Is there any possibility there could be just a group chat for some of the key stakeholders here, or is keep everything on the GitHub comments section? Is that the best place to do it?
GitHub comment section for the chip is probably the best place right now for certainly any material technical discussion.
Yeah, then Dylan, I think what we said, regarding just if you can get a working, if you can get working code, that's going to be a lot more useful, I think, with Max. To get sign off in terms of what you're building. I think that approach is going to be pretty good. In terms of if there's any issue on the chip, Bram, Max is sleeping now. I haven't been able a chance to check in with him, but by Monday next week, we'll be able to get clarity on that. And we'll, Jeff, someone reach out to you and just kind of make sure that everyone's happy there. It's good. It sounds like, that we're all in agreement, but, if Max has got some different view that there's some, fatal flaw, then we should probably just set up another meeting between a smaller one and just have a technical hash out or something. But it doesn't sound like it, so I don't really, I'm with you. I'm kind of confused as to if there's an issue. So let's just assume that it's fine, and then we'll let you know.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And Harold is available on Discord to discuss any technical details. I'm on Discord too. You cannot directly message me, but just put something in the chips channel. If you want to DM me, then you'll have to install Keybase.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining this. Thanks for presenting, Bram and Harold. And
Keep Stan.
yeah, let's make sure we're all in agreement and get this one across the finish line.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you, Dan. Have a great day all.
You too.